Total shock, last-minute decision by the Golden State Warriors stuns the fans. If you're a Golden State fan, you're probably tired of waking up to news that promises a lot and explains nothing, right? Seeing the team make decisions that seem to go against what you see on the court and being left with that feeling of, okay, but after all, what's the plan? In today's video, the Golden State Warriors' last-minute decision took everyone by surprise and left the fans in shock. But calm down. I'm not just going to drop the bomb and walk away. In less than a few minutes, I'll show you what's really behind this choice, how it affects Curry's future, whether the franchise is still thinking about a title or has already entered transition mode, and most importantly, what this decision means for you, the fan, who lives with this team every day. So stay with me, because from now on, we will cut through the noise, organize our ideas, and understand clearly whether this decision was a step towards the end of the era or the beginning of something much bigger. Before we jump into this Warriors decision, let me ask you something quick. If you live this team, suffer with every defeat, and vibrate with every three-pointer from Curry, subscribe to the channel now. Here you don't just get news thrown onto the screen, you get analysis, context, and truth about the Golden State. Press like because this shows YouTube that the Warriors fans are still huge, active, and want to be heard. And activate the bell so you don't miss the next videos, because in the next few minutes I'll show you whether this decision brings the team closer to a new title or a silent reconstruction, what is the real impact on Curry's future, and why no one in the crowd should ignore what is happening now. Once that's done, let's go together until the end, because what I'm going to reveal to you next could change the way you see this franchise from today onwards. Let me put you in a very clear scene in your head. Imagine waking up on any given day in San Francisco, opening your cell phone, and seeing the following headline: Stephen Curry gains the most dominant shooting partner of his entire Warriors era. It's not a blog rumor, it's not a social media montage, it's official news. Take a breather and think about the impact something like this would have on the entire NBA. Today, this is still just a hypothesis, behind-the-scenes talk, a projection by those who follow this team closely. But, behind the curtains, there is a scenario being discussed that would completely change the way we look at the Golden State Warriors. A scenario in which Curry would no longer play alongside a correct pivot, useful, or with a good tactical fit. He would have a future Hall of Famer by his side, a big man who changes the design of the court just by stepping on it. And that's what I want to talk to you about. Where the Warriors are today. Before talking about rumors, exchanges, and big names, we need to understand the starting point. After Kevin Looney's departure in free agency, the Warriors were faced with a simple but tough question. Who's going to hold the bag now? The front office's response was to seek a balance between experience and potential. Al Horford arrived, one of the most intelligent big-box players of his generation, and Quentin Post, a tall center with a shot, an interesting physique, and room to grow. On paper, the idea wasn't bad. You had a veteran who understands all the details of the game, who spaces the court, positions his body well, talks defensively, and a young man who needs to be prepared little by little. But the NBA isn't played on paper. When the ball goes up, the limitations become much more evident. Horford continues to read the game sharply, anticipates plays, helps with defensive organization, but the body does not respond as before. He can no longer, night after night, anchor the ball, consistently switch over explosive point guards, and still be the link that connects the entire defense for 30-35 minutes. Post, in turn, has tools. He's tall, has a good touch. He's not a lost player on the court, but it still doesn't impose fear inside the bottle. He's not the kind of rim protector that makes an attacker rethink an infiltration. It's a project, not a pillar. The result of all this is a functional, professional bottle, but below the standard you need to face, in a playoff series, names like Nikola Jokic, Karl Anthony Towns, Chet Holmgren, and mainly, all the volume of inches and wingspan that the Western Conference has accumulated. And then a louder buzz begins to emerge. It's not enough to patch up the bottle. The Warriors need a real transformation at the 4 and 5, not a solid backup, not a short contract to break the bank, a pillar. The limit of just system, Golden State's recent history, is a lesson in how basketball IQ, chemistry, and a well-crafted system can overcome physical disadvantages. For years, the team traded height for speed, brute strength for readiness, space, and it often worked. But the NBA doesn't stop. Meanwhile, the West was filling the board with talented, versatile, tall, and increasingly skilled bigs. Today you see squads with two 7-footers in the same formation, wingers who look like centers, centers who shoot like wings, and a collection of strong, long, and mobile players. There comes a time when tactical intelligence alone is not enough. You still need her, of course, but at a certain point in the championship, you need to put someone on the court who can face that size head-on, who matches the physical presence, and who, in addition, delivers star statistics. That's what's on the table. Curry's window and the type of star he's missing. In parallel to this situation, there is another factor that cannot be ignored. Time. Not playing time, but career time. Stephen Curry still plays at a very high level, but no one pretends anymore that he is at the beginning of his journey. The question within the front office is tough and unavoidable. How many All-NBA candidate-level seasons do he have left? How many more years will he attract double marking in the middle of the court? How long will it be possible to build a contender around what he does? If the honest answer is few, then there is no point in investing in timid movements. The next big decision needs to target someone who, healthy, lives on the top 10 or top 15 shelf in the league. A player capable of anchoring a defense, of being an offensive reference, of changing the team's ceiling, not just the floor. Someone, in short, who can be the best player on the court in a playoff game, even on a night when Curry isn't at his best. Where does Jimmy Butler fit into all this? Today, the other big name in this cast is Jimmy Butler. He arrived with a reputation as a playoff specialist, that player who transforms when the series gets more physical, slower, more mental. Butler is a winger who defends, creates his own shot, leads the locker room, imposes seriousness and competitiveness. In decisive games, his presence is a valuable asset, but the strategic issue goes beyond what it represents today. The question that the Warriors need to face is the following. Is Jimmy the ideal partner for the final stretch of Curry's career, or is he the piece that can pave the way for a bigger solution in the paint? One analyst summed it up quite clearly. If the Warriors are truly willing to shift their identity around a dominant center on both ends of the court, perhaps giving up something that causes pain is inevitable. And that something could be precisely Butler, the outline of a mega exchange. It is at this point that an exercise of imagination emerges that, little by little, took shape in behind-the-scenes conversations. An exchange scenario involving 3 teams, in which each would receive something aligned with their project phase. The logic would be more or less like this. Golden State Warriors receive a superstar center, capable of changing the franchise immediately. Milwaukee Bucks receive Jimmy Butler, fitting an elite wing onto a roster built around size and shooters. Dallas Mavericks receive roster depth and future assets, solid rotation players and draft picks that allow them to plan for a new cycle. Names like Kyle Kuzma, Bobby Portis, Kevin Porter Jr., and Taurean Prince often appear in these scenarios, accompanied by first-round picks and future trade rights. This is not a small package. That's years of draft flexibility being put on the table. And if you follow the logic on each side, it's not absurd. The Warriors are betting all their chips on correcting their biggest imbalance, the absence of a great dominant center. The Bucks add a wing who combines defense, playmaking, and playoff experience to boost their core. The Mavericks, thinking long-term, convert a heavy contract and a player with a history of injuries into flexibility, depth, and control for the future. If you connected the dots, you already know the name at the center of it all, the name that changes the tone of the conversation. Anthony Davis. The player who fits this profile at this moment in his career, in this range of impact, is Anthony Davis. A big who, in his best years, delivers around 20 points, 10 rebounds, more than 1 steal, and more than 1 block per game. A player who can punish attacking switches, contest shots at the rim, protect the paint, and still produce in mid-range situations. Davis has experienced practically every possible phase in the NBA. He was the face of a rebuilding franchise in New Orleans. He faced pressure from the Los Angeles Lakers. He won a title. He dealt with injuries. He saw the narrative about his career oscillate between an undisputed superstar and a star surrounded by questions. In a scenario where Dallas opts for a long-term plan, focusing on a young core and 5 to 10-year windows, a 30-year-old player with a maximum contract and a history of problems, the physicists become a complex piece. no matter how talented they are. For the Warriors, however, it is exactly this type of complex talent that could represent the last big bet alongside Curry. The defensive fit, returning to elite level. Let's put emotion aside for a few minutes and look at the fit coldly. On defense, Anthony Davis offers almost everything that Golden State has lost over time. The peak of the dynasty was built on a very clear foundation: high-level collective defense, efficient rim protection, constant communication, and versatility to change markings without dismantling the system. Over the years, Bogut stopped being that pillar in the paint. Draymond accumulated physical wear and tear. Looney found opponents and systems that exposed his limitations. The result was a defense that, although still competent at times, no longer intimidated in the same way. Davis replaces that fear, not just because of the volume of stumps, but because of the way it occupies the painted area. He protects the rim, contests layups, changes attackers' decisions, and still has enough mobility to, when he's healthy, chase down wingers for a few seconds on the perimeter and return in time to contest. Now imagine this structure with Draymond Green on the front line, organizing the defense, and Anthony Davis protecting the rear guard. Plays that would previously have ended in layups become difficult shots. Rotation errors, which today cost 3 points, start to become defensive rebounds and counterattacks. It's a combination that, if it works physically, puts the Warriors back among the most respected defenses in the league. The offensive fit, something the Warriors never had. If the impact is clear in defense, in attack, the fit is almost unprecedented in the Curry era. Over the years, the Warriors have had centers who played important roles: blocking, passing the ball efficiently, fighting for rebounds, finishing close to the rim, and sometimes spacing the court a little. But there has never been, alongside Curry, a big capable of being, at the same time, real threat in the post, finisher in the pick and roll, blocker that scares in the aerial game, and consistent scorer in mid-range zones. Anthony Davis offers that package. He doesn't need to be a three-ball specialist to open the court. If the opponent retreats too far, the mid-range shot is enough to punish. If he scores closer, he has the strength and length to attack the rim, draw fouls, and finish. Think about some specific situations. Curry-Davis high pick and roll. If the defense drops back to protect the rim, Curry has room to shoot threes. If they double on Curry, Davis receives the ball in the free throw region in a situation of numerical superiority. If they switch, Curry attracts a center to the perimeter and Davis gains advantage over a smaller defender near the basket. Dribble handoff between Curry and Davis. The defense needs to decide whether to chase Curry, opening a line for Davis, or whether to retreat to protect the corner, giving the shot to the point guard. Game in transition, a rebound from Draymond, quick pass to Curry, and Davis running in front of the marker. This generates 3 recurring scenarios: foul, tray, or air bridge. From a system point of view, Steve Kerr would have all the usual readings available: cuts, movement without the ball, use of indirect blocks, added to the resource of simply handing the ball to a big player who can score even when the play breaks down. It's something this team has never had in its purest form. The price to pay: salary, depth, and risk. Of course, a player with this impact does not arrive without compensation. Anthony Davis is on a top-level contract, as big as his reputation. To fit it into the roster without completely dismantling the squad, it is inevitable to resort to a multiple-team structure, send heavy contracts, and above all, give up draft picks. For the Warriors, this means accepting to live even deeper in the luxury tax, sacrificing flexibility and relying on one-off signings, minimum contracts, and internal development to fill the squad's gaps. Furthermore, there is the issue of health. Davis's history in the league is not one of exemplary durability. This is part of the package. Whoever makes this decision needs to be willing to face seasons in which the team may have to manage minutes, rests, and absences. Still, there is a central question. If you are already willing to pay one of the most expensive sheets in the league, would you rather be an expensive team that only fights for respectable campaigns, or an expensive team that, when everything falls into place, is truly feared? The human and cultural impact. there is also a less visible but equally relevant side: culture, environment, roles. Anthony Davis has already lived with enormous expectations, heavy criticism, changes in context, and demands on his own legacy. In an environment like the Warriors, he would find something different: a high, very clear structure and an already established culture. Curry is the team's technical and moral reference. The attack depends on his gravity, his leadership, the way he behaves. Draymond is the loudest voice in the defense, the player who charges, points, organizes. Klay represents the persistence, the drive, the pride of someone who has already reached the top and wants to prove that he can still be useful. Entering this system means accepting defined standards of professionalism, effort, and commitment to the collective. For some players, this is exactly what they need to take the next step. From a tactical point of view, aligning Davis and Draymond opens up a huge variety of formations. From quintets in which AD is the only big and the rest of the team are shooters and creators, to more physical formations, with two players capable of exchanging marking, protecting the rim, and commanding the defense. The cost of losing Jimmy Butler. None of this happens in a vacuum. For this trade to exist, Jimmy Butler would likely be leaving, and that has consequences. Butler is a player who has already carried teams in playoff series, taken over games in attack, marked the best opponent player, raised the standard of seriousness for entire locker rooms. Losing this type of presence means, on some level, giving up versatility on the perimeter, creation in the half-court, and a very specific type of competitiveness. In practice, this could force the Warriors in a second moment to look for another perimeter creator, someone who can help ease Curry's load, especially in the minutes when Davis is on the bench. The cast would need additional adjustments. The question is, do you accept this cost in the name of a truly dominant bottle, timelines, and competitive window? Another important element in this equation is the way each player tends to age. Jimmy Butler built his career on contact, strength, infiltrations, physical disputes, intense defense, and contested shots. This type of game tends to suffer more over the years because it relies heavily on explosion and the ability to absorb repeated hits. Anthony Davis, on the other hand, even with his history of injuries, has a set of characteristics that can continue to impact games even with some physical decline. Wingspan, defensive reading, ability to contest shots, touch around the rim, presence in the painted area. If the Warriors believe that they will still have a few seasons at a high level from Curry, it makes sense to bet on a big-time player who can extend the competitive window, taking a leading role in different phases of a game, whether scoring or protecting the rim. What if you were in charge? Now I want to bring this decision to you. Imagine that, for one day, you are sitting in the Warriors' general manager's chair. The two proposals are on the table. Keep the cast as is, trust Butler, bet on Post's growth, get the most out of Horford, look for minor adjustments, count on the system and Curry's genius to remain competitive, and hope that at the right time, the playoff clashes fall into place. Risking everything on Anthony Davis, giving up Butler, giving up draft picks, giving up some future flexibility. Accept the physical risk, accept the financial cost, accept the enormous pressure that would come with that gamble in exchange for a significantly higher ceiling. Which of these options would you choose? My personal reading. When I look at the Western Conference today, I see a scenario where the Warriors are still respected, still feared on specific nights, but are no longer automatically placed in the top tier of title contenders. The system is still solid. The technical committee is still competent. The club's culture is still one of the league's references. What seems to be missing very clearly is that piece in the bottle that changes the tone of the conversation. Someone who corrects defensive flaws, protects the rim at an elite level, and is a real weapon on offense, especially when the game slows down and spaces shrink. A healthy Anthony Davis represents just that. It doesn't solve all problems, it doesn't guarantee title, it doesn't eliminate risk, but the level of ambition changes. Instead of just talking about competitive season, maybe a good campaign, you once again seriously discuss the possibility of competing for the title. The question, then, is not whether this movement is perfect, because it is not. The question is whether the risk matches the potential reward. What does this possibility say about the franchise? Ultimately, this Anthony Davis rumor for the Warriors is more than speculation. It works as a mirror for the franchise itself. It forces the organization to answer some uncomfortable questions. Do we still see ourselves as real contenders for the title? We are willing to pay the price in assets, in finances, in criticism to try to extract as much as possible from the latest Curry's elite-level years? Would we prefer to end this cycle gradually with good seasons, or try one last big leap, even at the risk of failing? Either answer has consequences. If the Warriors take a chance on Davis and it pays off, we could be about to witness one of the most impactful late-career partnerships of the modern era, a game-changing point guard alongside a center who, at his best, dominates both ends of the court. If you choose to do nothing, this story can easily turn into one of those what-if that fans have been discussing for many, many years. Now it's up to you. I will end this conversation by bringing back the question that drives this entire debate. If this trade was on the table, with all the health risks, all the cost in picks, all the pressure from the media and fans, but also with the real chance of seeing a Curry-Anthony Davis nucleus in Oakland, would you press the confirm button or not? Do you think this is the right move to attack Steph's last years of heyday, or do you prefer the alternative of maintaining the current base and waiting for a different opportunity, perhaps a less risky name, perhaps a more gradual path? Tell me in the comments what your decision would be, and most importantly, why. I want to understand how you, as a fan, see this moment for the franchise. Time to dare or time to preserve? If you want to continue following this type of analysis, unraveled rumors, explained tactical impact, and frank discussion about each step of our Golden State Warriors, subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and share this content with that friend who loves setting up exchanges and simulating scenarios. I'll follow you here, game by game, news by news, rumor by rumor, following each new chapter of this story with you. Because, whether with the current squad or with a big star in the paint, one thing remains the same. As long as Stephen Curry is wearing the Warriors jersey, this team will never be just another team in the NBA. So let's close this in a very direct way. If this trade happens, the entire NBA will come to a halt. There will be a manager redoing a medium-term plan, a coach rewriting a defensive scheme, and many analysts having to admit that they underestimated the last competitive breath of this core. Curry and Anthony Davis together wouldn't just be another strong duo. They would be a statement, a clear message that Golden State is not ready to become just a souvenir of a dynasty, but rather willing to fight for the last thread of shine of its greatest player. Either this works out very well and puts the Warriors back in the title conversation, or it becomes one of those historic movements that we revisit for decades, for better or for worse. And that's exactly why this discussion isn't just about statistics, salary, or tactical fit. It's about identity. It's about choosing between accepting a peaceful end or risking everything for another great race. At some point, the front office is going to have to answer that question. But before that, I want to hear from you. Now, if you've made it this far, don't stop with this video. If you like this type of deep dive, want to understand the scenario, behind the scenes, tactical impact, and what each rumor really means for the future of the franchise, the next step is clear. As soon as you finish this video, go straight to the Warriors Analyses playlist in the pinned comment. There, I separated the most complete content on the channel, analysis of possible exchanges, detailed cast readings, matchup studies against the main contenders in the West, and projections of what could be the next chapter of this Curry era. Click on the Warriors Analyses playlist in the pinned comment, press play, and start marathoning calmly. If the Warriors' future goes through a bombshell decision like this, you'll want to be well informed when the next big headline finally appears.